wide as well. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome back to the program Dr. Nils Mueller Kronast. Dr. Mueller, how are you doing this evening?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. Thank you.
And thanks for coming back. And I'll back on the program, and I'll just talk a little bit about what I was alluding to. You were on Fox 29 News yesterday morning.
Right.
That was huge for Stroke Awareness Month. John Favoli, one of my favorite reporters, interviewed you. Although it was brief, you got out a lot of information. Right. I always tell doctors afterwards, TV news is quick. It's always less than 3 minutes.
That segment really is focused on stroke prevention, so I think it's very important. The best thing is actually to prevent the stroke, not to treat it. But
prevent it in the first hand.
Yes.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I want to, and I'll say it again at the end of the program, but Dr. Mueller is going to be on CBS 12 News this Sunday, actually on Mother's Day. And it's going to run in the between 7 and 8 o'clock hour. We're getting there at 7, so I'm thinking it probably 7:38. And again, that's WPC CBS 12 News this Sunday, where he's going to talk more about stroke awareness on the TV. So if you have a chance to tune in, if not, check us out at tfpsdocs.com or pbni.com, and we'll post the link to the show and video of the broadcast. So I'll say that again at the end of the program. But one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because every time I talk to you, you're a very busy interventional neurologist, but you always have something new. There's always something on the horizon. And we were talking about stroke bypass, and the first thing I thought about was, oh, he's bypassing a certain artery or vessel. But that's not the program. Can you talk a little bit about stroke bypass and why it's important?
Right. So about 10 years ago, the only option to treat stroke was to give clot busting in the vein, and you went to a so-called primary stroke center, and you really didn't have the need to be transferred anywhere else. About starting in 2015, catheter treatment for stroke became standard of care. When you had a severe stroke, catheter treatment clearly is better. It reduces the number of patients that are remaining with disability. It reduces the number of people who die from their strokes. It's very, very effective. It's probably among the most effective interventions that we have in medicine. And as of this year, actually, there's 2 publications that prove that this works up to 24 hours out. So this whole time window thing has become less of an issue, although people shouldn't forget that time is still brain. The earlier you treat, the better the patient will do. And the key issue we have with that is that now you had 2 separate groups of hospitals. You had one hospital that was a primary center that could only treat with clot-busting agent, and the other one is a comprehensive center, and the comprehensive center can treat both with clot-busting agent but also with catheter techniques, and that's where I work. For instance, Delray Medical Center is a comprehensive stroke center. St. Mary's is a comprehensive stroke center. And we treat patients very rapidly if they get to us. The problem used to be that they would get first to a primary stroke center, somebody there would go through a decision-making process, then transfer them after about 2 hours of door-in, door-out time, and then eventually they would get to us. And then the damage was already done. So the key issue in Palm Beach and in Broward is now that patients are being bypassed. What that means is that basically the paramedic in the truck does certain scores, and based on that, they decide that they're not going to go to a closer facility, but to a comprehensive stroke center, because the patient will have a better chance of getting this treatment. And with that, South Florida has tripled the amount of treatment with catheters compared to other parts of the state. So it's very, very effective. Patients do much better. We now treat patients up to within an hour from symptom onset, and these patients are the ones that walk out of the hospital. And that's dramatic.
And that's what you want, quality of life.
Correct.
If you can give that back to them, that is so important.
So bypass basically means you bypass the primary stroke center and go directly to the comprehensive stroke center. And what we now use the paramedics for is to give us a heads up. They contact us from the scene. They radio to us and said, there's a bad stroke coming in. You need to get to the hospital. And we literally get the team moving before the patient even gets there. And that's how we get to these fantastic times. Our median time right now in Delray Medical Center was 41 minutes for the first quarter from the patient hitting the door to us having access to the groin. And so that's really, really good. And it's much lower than anywhere else in the country.
Well, let's take that thought right there. And is that what we see in the news as door-to-needle time, that 41 minutes?
So door-to-needle is obviously when you get your clot-busting agent. The metric for catheter treatment is called door-to-groin or door-to-puncture time, and that's that 41 minutes. So actually, we have a door-to-needle time of in the 30s and a door-to-puncture in the low 40s. So that's really how close you've become. And we treat as many patients with catheters now than we do with clot-busting agents. Some of them actually even overlap. because the clot busting doesn't work, but it's still standard of care. We give it.
Okay, that's the TPA.
That's TPA, correct. But
Which,
TPA is, for some of those patients, will actually go away and will only be centered around this catheter-based treatment.
Okay, and then when you say catheter-based treatment of the groin, so that's a catheter that's going in through the groin interventionally.
Into the artery. Basically, you thread a very small catheter right into the brain and snare this clot with a device and literally pull the clot out.
From the leg to all the way up into the brain.
Correct.
Isn't that amazing?
We do that while the patient is awake. At least in a lot of times we do it. If the patient's cooperative, we can do that to save time. And the whole procedure is over in 40 minutes.
I remember when I first met you years ago, I was a reporter for Delray Foreman Sun Sentinel, and you had me in your office and you were talking to me about this pipeline embolization device. And you had shown me a picture of a clot that you had taken out.
Right.
You pretty much, it was like a screen and you went up and...
Right. It's not the pipeline. It's a solitaire device.
Solitaire.
Yeah, the solitaire device is very similar. They're all very tiny little devices that go in the brain. Pipelines to fix a brain aneurysm, which we may talk about later. Okay. But the solitaire device is actually it's basically a little wire mesh or chain link fence looking device that is rolled up in a catheter, and you open up and you snare that clot and you pull it out. And it's very, very effective. And it's really revolutionized stroke care.
I got it mixed up there. Thanks for clarifying. I do know that you use both of them to go up into the brain to grab the problem, and you actually take that right out of the body.
Right.
And that's something that is there, right? And that's where I got it from seeing the picture there. Right. So I want to go back a little bit. So you talked a lot about working with EMTs and fire rescue, and that's something I've seen here in South Florida. I'm working obviously on the PR side, but I've seen that that collaboration just strengthen in here locally, especially in Palm Beach County.
Right. In Palm Beach and Broward, we have a very unique pilot project that has just started, and we're going to get our first so-called dashboard. What happens basically is we have voluntarily been sending data to a registry with the American Heart Association called Get With The Guideline. This data is now being digested by the Florida State Registry, which is a non-for-profit in Miami. And then they give the EMS teams data back of each hospital that is voluntarily participating, and it benchmarks each hospital. So I can look at that, and I know which one is my hospital. I don't know who the other ones are. They're just basically anonymized. And I can see, oh, I'm good, I'm where I need to be, or, hey, I really need to improve my process. And our belief is that once we measure outcomes, we can actually improve them. Because if you don't know where you are, you don't know, should I put more resources into improving this process? And that will make stroke care much faster, much better for everybody, and it'll literally save lives.
And I know it's going to be launched soon. You recently did a video with them. I was actually in the hospital as doing PR, and you actually had them. It was during obviously a slower time, which I'm Delray. I mean, that was amazing just to see that. Right. But they were in and out. It was Palm Beach County Fire Rescue's video crew talked to you in your neurointerventional room where you do
basically what we use this collaboration for is we need the paramedics as the neurologists in the field. They do scores, and based on those scores, they improve our accuracy as to when we have to call in the teams. They use what's called a RACE plus score. If they have certain signals like gaze deviation, where the patient during their stroke has a certain turn of their eyes or certain other features, then they let us know that these signs are present, and that triggers that we bring in the team before they even arrive at the hospital, and that's why we get to these very, very short numbers. And short numbers literally means patients going home. If we have short door to puncture times, patients walk out of the hospital.
Yeah, like you said, that's amazing. Walk right out of the hospital. We're here with Dr. Nils Mueller. He's an interventional neurologist with the Palm Beach Neuroscience Institute. That's where his office is located. He's in Canyon Town Center in Boynton Beach. I have the address here, but he's on staff at Delray Medical Center, which he mentions a level 1 trauma center. Also Florida Medical Center, which we've had a lot of doctors on this program, so you'll recognize that. Just about 30 minutes away from here, Boca. They're over in Fort Lauderdale. And also on staff at St. Mary's Medical Center in West Palm Beach, our other level 1 trauma center. Dr. Mueller's office is located at 8756 Boynton Beach Boulevard, Suite 2500. Like I said, in the Canyon Town Center. You can always find any of his info at pbni.com. And I will read his areas of interest coming up. Now, we talked a little bit about the video. the little bit about the EMT work you're doing, that's awareness. I mean, you're working directly with these emergency medical technicians. We're talking about paramedics, firefighters
Stroke
as
care
well.
really can't happen in the hospital in isolation anymore. We now need this partnership between the paramedics and the hospital, and we need to close the loop on quality control, which these dashboards allow us to do. We can now know how did the patient do at 90 days compared to, the process quality that went into his care, and then we know, what do we need to improve, and the EMS medical directors will then know this hospital is really providing excellent care, and it's worthwhile driving an extra 5 or 10 minutes to get the patient to the best care that is available in the county.
And that's a point you've made a couple times is time. Now, when I first started studying this, again, from the PR standpoint, I'm going to say that I remember when there were the primary stroke centers and comprehensive stroke centers, and I'll tell you, it was a little confusing from the outside. And then after you heard a few stories, whether in this organization or others, about, the person went to this hospital and they were evaluated there, and then they were transferred maybe to another hospital, and that time was lost in between. Now it's amazing that you have the partnership and connection and collaboration with these.
So this is not done in a vacuum. So for instance, our hospitals were the top enrollers in a big national registry with 1,000 patients that looked at process quality. And what we learned is that where you take this patient is almost as important as whether you do the intervention or not, just because of these time dependencies of the treatment. If I do the treatment later, I have to treat 8 patients. If I do it earlier, I have to treat 2 patients to have 1 near normal outcome. So this is really how impactful time is. Time is brain. And in Palm Beach County and Broward, we no longer go to primary stroke centers with a suspected stroke, because if in doubt, you have to go to the highest center. Just this morning, we had a patient that looked like a mild stroke, then worsened. If you had gone to the wrong hospital first, this patient wouldn't have been able to get the embolectomy. That patient this afternoon is completely back to baseline. So that's why the EMS medical directors have decided to participate in this pilot project and do the bypass and do the data collection.
That's great news. And tell us a little bit about the range of stroke patients you've treated in South Florida. I mean, the age range, because I know there was that story a few years ago where you helped a 13-year-old boy who had a stroke. And that kind of amazed me, because I'm thinking stroke has got to be, senior citizen, someone later in life. But what is the age range? And are you seeing a little lower ages?
So there's definitely a shift towards the lower demographic. We have a lot of patients under 50 years of age. I have 2 in the hospital right now. So it is becoming increasingly frequent. The reasons for that aren't entirely clear, but it means that there has to be more public awareness to recognize symptoms of stroke even when they're sort of not in the classic stroke age range. So if you have face, arm, speech problems, then time is of the essence. FAST is the acronym. Everybody in the population should know that acronym and recognize sudden onset of focal neurological deficits, facial drooping, arm weakness, speech problems with dysarthria or garbled speech. Then you should call 911. Don't take the patient to the hospital by yourself. Do that through EMS, because they can pre-alert us and they come in much faster.
And when you talk face, and thank you you always take the time to say that acronym, and I know you've said it a million times probably, but still it's so important. I've actually learned it from listening to people like you or watching people like you, physicians. Now, with face, it can also be like facials drooping, but it can also kind of look like half of the face is paralyzed?
Correct. Yeah,
in a way?
The drooping is basically that one side droops down, doesn't close, the mouth doesn't close as much. You slur your speech, usually associated with it. Usually it's face and arm, because in the brain these areas are very close together, so it's not one or the other, it's usually both. And especially when both are happening together, most people now recognize that that's a sign of a stroke, and they don't wait, because those are the patients that can really help. To get back to your age range, this 13-year-old patient that I helped, in his case, it was not recognized initially. They thought he had a seizure. There was a whole number of other diagnoses that were entertained before people realized, oh no, this kid is actually having a stroke. And it took, I think, almost 5.5 hours for this child to get to us because of that. So it's very, very important that the public knows what the signs and symptoms of stroke are, so that we can get patients to treatment as fast as possible.
Now, if you see a family member or a friend who has symptoms, facial drooping,
Right.
The arm, that just something that doesn't look right, should you get them in a vehicle as quick as possible and drive them to the emergency room, or?
No, 911, there's plenty of data that a 911 call, especially in a well-developed 911 system like we have here in Florida, the paramedics can usually be there between 4 and 7 minutes. They spend about 10 to 12 minutes on the scene, and then they get the patients to us, lights and sirens. They pre-announce the patient. We know exactly who's coming in. The team is already ready to receive the patient. If you go through an emergency room, you have to go negotiate a triage process. It's much slower. It's much faster to call 911. Let us do the, outsource the job to the professionals and call them. That's the best thing.
And yeah, let me tell you, I only had to call 911 once, actually, for my mom a few years ago, and I was amazed they were there in under like 3 minutes. This was up in Tequesta. And the other part of that story is the day I was filming the video with you in Palm Beach County Fire Rescue, well, I wasn't filming, but I was on site as support. We were leaving, and there was actually a fire rescue ambulance coming in, and you had heard the calls because we were a little behind the scenes. And like you said, they backed right in. I'm not kidding. I got out of the way, and they went right in through a special entrance.
Straight to CT. The patient doesn't really have any delays, so we have the imaging right away. Every other process has been shown to be slower, so it's the best thing to do it that way.
So call 911 if you see anything that doesn't look right as well.
Right.
That's great that you've made this collaboration, and the Delray Medical Center and Tenet Health is able to get into studies like that. And
we've been very fortunate to have the partnership both from industry but also from the EMS community to really work together to improve the stroke process. And it all comes down to you can't improve what you don't measure. In the past, medicine has not really been passionate to measure what happens at 90 days at the ultimate outcome. But I think that's where we're moving towards. And for stroke, we are really seeing that what we do has a dramatic impact, and it's very cost effective as well.
And we're going to blow right through our commercial, so I'm just going to give out your info and keep going because this is an amazing talk we're having with Dr. Nils Mueller, interventional neurologist with Palm Beach Neuroscience Institute, on staff at Delray Medical Center primarily, but also Florida Medical Center in Broward County. That's called Florida Medical Center campus in North Shore, and St. Mary's Medical Center. Dr. Mueller is bilingual in English and German. See on your site. I saw on a bio card today in basic Spanish.
Very basic Spanish.
Very basic, but hey.
Get me around.
Yeah, and hey, you know what? With hospitals nowadays, you have people speaking Creole, Spanish, just about everything. So that's great. I'm sure you can grab someone. And like I said, I'm going to go right through the commercial break because we have a lot of info. I wanted to ask you because we talk a lot about stroke, and I had seen a story last week. It was actually a baseball player. We were talking a little baseball out there, a Chicago White Sox pitcher, and he actually had made it to the dugout, and kind of the teammates thought something was wrong. He's only 31 years old, athlete at the top of his game. He actually, what they're saying is he had a cerebral aneurysm.
Right.
And he was rushed to the hospital, and it was, I believe it was
Chicago.
A ruptured aneurysm in his brain. I guess they described it as surgery, but that would have been an interventional procedure in most cases. Is that something that you do as well?
Over 95% of patients with this kind of condition would go for intervention because the catheter treatment has been shown to be much less disruptive. You go through an artery that's already preformed. You don't have to tunnel through existing brain tissue to get to where the problem is. And you can repair the ruptured aneurysm, fill it with coils much more effectively without more damage compared to open surgery. So open surgery has really gone to the background. The majority of patients are treated. We treat patients like that at Delray or St. Mary's. And fortunately, if the initial bleed is not devastating, these patients can have very good outcomes because it's primarily bleeding around the brain tissue, but there's a lot of secondary complications. So you need to have a very competent team to manage the initial first 21 days of the hospitalization because that's when they have their problems.
Yeah,
and
that's
was
what
his
they were.
problem too. I think he had some brain swelling and some other issues. So those are the feared complications that you can have with that condition.
Those first few days, they were really concerned. I think I checked on the story recently. I think looks like he's going to make pretty much a full recovery over time. Yeah. It's going to take time.
Yeah.
Like you said.
But it's remarkable. Usually at 6 months, these patients look like they've never had an issue. And if they were managed well and if they're a little bit lucky. But you have to have a very skilled team. For instance, we have board-certified neurocritical care providers on staff that basically are skilled to train patients with those conditions, even after the intervention. The intervention is one piece, repairing the aneurysm is one piece, but then you have to do a whole bunch of things afterwards.
There's a whole team, right? That's great. And I will mention Dr. Mueller and Palm Beach Neuroscience Institute and the physicians, a neurologist at Tenet Florida Physician Services, are a part of the Advanced Neuroscience Network. You may remember a campaign not too long ago. We were out everywhere with that ANN and the logo. So that's what our neurologists fall under. So
one of the things I do, I'm the regional medical director for the Advanced Neuroscience Network, and my role is obviously to make sure that when you have a facility that carries that banner, that you get the same quality, the same approach, the same process everywhere, every time. And actually, I see my mission even beyond that. I want to go out and provide that same care county-wide as much as that's possible. That's one of the incentives to form and participate in that dashboard, because I think that's going to go beyond just our facilities where I have control, but to others, because it's going to really lift the boat for everybody.
So ANN Advanced Neuroscience Network, that goes also into Miami-Dade County, I should mention. So we have a lot of physicians, believe it or not, on this program from Miami-Dade.
Yeah, our biggest center is the Palmetto General Hospital. They are a Joint Commission certified comprehensive stroke center, one of only 3 in Miami-Dade County, and one of, I think, only less than a handful in Florida. So that designates a very high standard of excellence. And they have all these things that we just talked about: dedicated neurocritical care, neurointervention, neurosurgery, all that in one package under quality control.
And listeners and viewers might remember Dr. Ratish Kaushal has been on this program, and he's interventional neurologist.
I want to give a shout out to Dr. Kaushal. That one of the things, for instance, Palmetto won is they won the best process time for door to needle in the state of Florida. St. Mary's was the number 2. I believe it was in 2016. That's the latest numbers we have. 2017 numbers are not out. So just to give you a perspective, our hospitals have been leading the quality process in Florida for some time now.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of that.
You guys have hit it out of the park on that. That's great news. And like I said, Dr. Kaushal has been on the program. He's very busy, as Dr. Mueller is, so I try to get you on when I can. You're very willing to do interviews, and I can't thank you enough, because you love to get the awareness out, especially May is American Stroke Month, and I know what is like your 4th interview in 2 days or something.
For me, the key impetus to have these interviews is because it breaks my heart when people are unaware, go to a smaller facility, and basically get stuck there. We fortunately have now paramedics that literally tell them, I'm not going to take you to this hospital. I will take you to the Comprehensive Stroke Center because I know you'll get better care there. And that's somewhat paternalistic, but it's very, very important that if you're in a stress situation, you may make the wrong decision. We have to have a system of care that does right by every patient every time. Yeah,
definitely. Most definitely. I know we talked a little bit before you came on about what's next. I know there's a study that you wanted to kind of give us a preview on. We touched on a little bit before. I believe that's with the dashboards as well.
Right. So we are publishing the data on what the impact was on stroke care in Florida, and we see that there's a dramatic regional disparity based on the numbers that we're measuring. South Florida, because of this bypass, because of the fact that the decision for a interventional surgery is not made in a hospital that doesn't do the surgery by a physician that doesn't do the surgery, but rather at the comprehensive center by an interventionalist, that increases access to this procedure, and that's why we have 3 times more patients getting this treatment. The problem that we have right now is that we have hospitals with the same designation, and one hospital may treat 3% of their patients with this treatment, and another hospital may treat over 25% with that same treatment. And you ask yourself, why is that? And can't we get everybody to use that treatment more widely because it's so effective? And that's really what this dashboard helps to do, because it helps EMS medical directors send patients to the center that shows excellent process.
To get everyone on the same page.
Right.
And okay, and that's info that we're probably going to see in the news here in next. I know you're working hard on it as well. And if you want to go back to this show or any shows, you can go to allcountyhealthcare.com or on Facebook Live. They're gonna they have it as well, All County Healthcare INC, or Dr. Mueller's website. I'm gonna put it up there once I get the show. We already have 19 shares. Wow, we only have 2 minutes left, so I'm gonna be quick. And that's great, 19 shares. So people are watching on Facebook Live, and you can always get all the shows there. I just shared to my page. I wanted to quickly go through. You're also stroke vascular neurology office consultations, endovascular management of elective and ruptured aneurysm. We talk a little bit about that. Endovascular management of vascular malformations, that's dural AV fistulas, arterial venous malformations. Wow, I got that right. I thought I was going to miss that one.
So it gets very complicated, but in the end, it comes down to neurointerventionalists like myself, like Dr. Kashal, like my partner, Dr. Malik. All what we do is basically we focus on the brain plumbing. Anything from the neck down, your blocked carotids, your blood vessels in the brain. If they're blocked, or if they have aneurysms, or if they have malformations, we will take care of that.
Now I see it after all these years. I had a interventional cardiologist on here. He said, David, I'm a plumber of the heart. You're a plumber of the brain.
Correct.
Wow. Well, again, thank you so much. I know we only have a minute left. So, again, Dr. Nils Mueller. Check out pbni.com. Great website. You can see all Dr. Mueller's colleagues as well. They're treating epilepsy, general neurology, interventional neurology, and just about everything else. Neuropsychology.
I have the good fortune that all the stuff that I'm not proficient in, I can send to my partners, like my partner, Dr. Dalby, who's an expert in movement disorder. I wouldn't treat a Parkinson's patient, even though I'm a neurologist, because everybody now is so super specialized. You know, I'm a brain plumber. That's what I do.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mueller, for being so generous with your time again.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you on Tuesday on the You and Your Doctor show.
Thank you.
For a prescription to better health from the top doctors in the medical fields of cardiology, neurology, orthopedics, sports medicine, and primary care, join us each week on the How to Stay Healthy show.